Hello, welcome to my channel, Save Infinity. In this video, I just wanted to briefly talk about the idea of more like shadowy or parasitic type energies or what have you. And kind of just like the idea of, having multiple, timelines and, multi-dimensional aspects. That, sometimes the more, conscious part of like our soul and energy or what have you will be kind of aligned to timelines that are more like resonant for us or what have you. Kind of thinking of the aspect, if there is, all these many timelines and, on each timeline there's like, a version of you or like a version of people, like a version of their vessel, if you will, like their human body on each timeline. It's like not every single version is piloted by, a fractal of source energy or, their soul or what have you, that's like super conscious and awake as every version. It's not like they're all equally conscious and awake across all those timelines. Some versions of them on some timelines will be like a lot more awake and conscious, and other versions will be like less awake and conscious. I guess kind of the idea where you can get those whole NPC type ideas and stuff like that. And you tend to be more consciously awake or what have you, and more of your light in your vessel on timelines that are either like more resonant for you, like more of like your heaven timeline, if you will, that are like more of like an energetic match for you, that bring you all that happiness and joy and what have you, or being on timelines where your soul or what have you felt like would be beneficial for you to be able to learn and grow through sort of like, different catalysts and experiences. And so, when there's versions of, someone's vessel on a timeline that isn't very piloted or, isn't very consciously awake or what have you, doesn't have a lot of strong frequency of like their soul or consciousness kind of fractal energy really coming through and being pulled into that version of their vessel on that timeline, it's almost like instead of being really filled up with a lot of their energy, or however you want to call it, like their frequency. It's like there's like a lot of, empty space. It's almost like an empty vessel just kind of sleepwalking around, that can then be more easily like overtaken or inhibited by more like shadowy entities or parasitic type energies. That can then, do certain things or partake in certain things to almost try to, energetically feed off the other vessels that are more light source, if you will, that have more of their light frequency inhabited in their vessel. They can kind of go around disguised in this familiar vessel and kind of, energetically feed and drain or what have you. So, that's why it can be important to, really have that sort of discernment energetically and kind of know when things, do feel a bit draining or off in that sense, with certain people or energies around you. Or when you are feeling like, certain energies or people aren't really, super resonant for you or things like that, not feeling, a need to be attached to those vessels specifically on the timeline you're on, particularly through things like guilt or shame as well, which are more like lower, denser frequencies and energies you want to let go of. And instead, align yourself more to energies and people and experiences that do feel aligned and that do, enhance, your own experience, rather feeling like it's draining your experience, trying to find your own more heaven aligned timelines and experiences and what have you. Otherwise you could just end up spending a lot of your time, around these sort of vessels that, look like, people that you and love and just, see more normally and human in that aspect, but could be like heavily, you know, piloted by a more like shadowy entity or parasitic energy that's, you know, just draining and feeding off you and kind of distracting or pulling you back away from so many much more enjoyable experiences you could be out there delving in. You know, kind of like reminds me of those movies and stuff like that are, you know, paranormal or what have you, where they have like, you know, demonic energies or what have you that, you know, take over people's bodies, and then they're all like, you know, like, that's not your mom anymore, so, you know, and then the body's all like trying to like feed off them, and they're all like, oh no, but it's my mom, and they're like, no. You know, not to make it as dramatic or that, or to be, you know, making anyone like fearful or paranoid, but just to kind of help explain that sort of energetic dance that, you know, can go on in such like an energetic matrix reality. You know, sometimes that version of someone may be more consciously operating on another timeline with, you know, a whole other array of experiences, and so you've kind of interacting with more of an empty shell of, you know, their actual self that's then kind of been, you know, all that empty space from when they're consciously operating in another timeline. You know, their vessel is then more open to certain parasitic or shadowy energies or entities being able to kind of step in and almost like wear that vessel as like a skin suit, right? And so it can, you know, look and feel and almost, you know, appear like it is, you know, them per se. That's why, you know, things like going off how you feel energetically, you know, in your body, and, you know, intuition and discernment and things like that can really come into play with certain like interactions and stuff that you have with people, and, you know, not trying to do it from a place of fear or judgment or, you know, or anything like that. Not that you need to react to it in any way, but just, you know, putting up boundaries as you need to, and, you know, cutting cords and, you know, cutting contact and stuff like that as you need to with certain energies and people or beings, in order to, you know, protect your own energetic sovereignty and to align yourself to your own more like heaven aligned timelines. You know, kind of like Little Red Riding Hood, right? When she goes to visit her grandma and it's the wolf pretending to be her grandma. That's sort of similar vibe, right? When you kind of sense it's, you know, a wolf in sheep's clothing and not actually what you think it is. You know, it can be a good idea just to practice those sort of energetic boundaries and measures to just, you know, not be wasting your time having your experience being, you know, drained and what have you through those sort of energetic exchanges. All right, well, I might leave this one here for now. Sending you so much peace, love, light, and blessings as always.